What's going on, family? Just had a conversation with my brother, my older brother, Cleveland Bay, Coconut, as he's known by, on the airways, on the CB radio. And we talked about freight rates and what determines freight rates. We talked about shippers, the influence that brokers have on freight rates, and consumer spending and the economy and the recession. We really talked about some good stuff, and I recorded the conversation on Zoom. So that's what we're gonna get into in this video. Hope you get value.
All right, so yeah, man. So the reason I wanted to have this discussion, what kind of sparked my interest in this subject of freight rates and what determines freight rates, is because, and I'm sure you've heard this argument before or seen it online from people or whatever, is people say drivers, hauling cheap freight messes up the market. I see that on Facebook all the time. Man, I wish y'all drivers would leave this cheap freight alone. Y'all messing up the market for all of us. Just let it sit, And then I hear a variety of opinions as far as, what I mean, like people's thoughts on that subject. So let's just start right there, man. Have you seen that before? Have you heard people talking like that before? What's your thoughts on that?
Oh, absolutely. I've heard it. But I mean, what can you do? If you're sitting somewhere and you need a load and the people are offering a load, do you come back empty? If it's going right back to where you need to get to, or do you just leave it and, come on back with nothing on your back? So I'm not,
I was agreeing. I was listening to you.
Right. So I'm not saying, do it or don't do it, but,
it really shouldn't be none of your business whether somebody else do it or don't do it.
Well, I mean, it's got to be my business as well, because it's kind of messing up the rates. But I guess I'm in a situation where, if you can haul it cheap, if you can haul it for that, go ahead. But, if I may not find myself in a situation where I can sit around and wait or try to find something else, I might just come on back empty. Because, the way I haul, I run out, a load, and I come back, grab another load and go back. Go back out. I do 2-3 runs a day like that. So if I see a load, say if I'm unloading in, say, Norfolk, and I see a load over in Virginia Beach paying, say, $300 to come back to Richmond, I may not have time to go get it. But if I'm sitting down there and, with nothing to do, and I see a load coming back paying $300, which most people would consider a cheap load, I get it on, and they said, well, the people say, well, you can unload it today when you get back, hey, what do you do, So in certain situations, it may be different for different drivers. You might want to leave it, or you may want to go get it, so.
And I guess that's kind of what I meant when I said, it really, I would think it like a person really, like, you can't even say whether it's cheap freight to another person because you don't know their circumstance, kind of just
exactly.
Like you said,
Right.
And there's a whole variety of circumstances that I could think of. I don't run like that. I don't deal with that, but it's a whole variety of circumstances that I could think of that a person would be like, I would rather take that back than nothing. I mean, especially if you're talking about, you talking about a minute ago, Virginia Beach back to Richmond or something like that. But if you like running regional or something, and you got a lot of miles, it's like I'm coming back through 2 or 3 states, or I'm not, or a state or whatever it is. It's just like I might need to get home on a Friday evening. I got something going on. It's me and my wife's anniversary weekend, but again, I ain't been running all week, and I ain't about to come back empty, and I can't afford to go, nowhere else out the way to get the load or whatever. I'm just thinking about all those different circumstances that might cause a person to, like you said, to take that load or to not take that load. But it seems like it's so many people that feel some kind of way about that. Again, that's why I kind of wanted to, hop on and have a discussion with somebody, because people are passionate about that subject right there.
Oh,
man.
yeah,
Like,
absolutely.
and it's like, I mean, but now, okay, now speaking for the other side, or thinking for the other side, do you think when a person is saying that, they saying that because they feel like they understand what it costs to run a truck, and they feel like the freight that's being hauled is not enough to satisfy that in a general sense? Or do you think that they saying that because they personally have a high cost of operation? You understand what I'm saying?
Well, I would imagine most people base it off of the fact that, if fuel prices are high, generally right now it costs a lot to operate a truck. So, and when I think about the cheap freight that most people are referring to, is freight that somebody is kind of a dedicated lane or dedicated route or whatever, where they got, say, 100 trucks or 50 trucks hauling out of a certain plant, going to a certain area for a cheap rate, stuff like that. That's what I'm thinking about when they're talking about, hauling cheap freight. You dedicate yourself to a cheap lane or something, undercutting somebody for a contract or something like that. I'm thinking that they referring more so to that type of cheap freight. So
you don't think they're talking about like spot market type stuff?
I don't think so. Because
Why
I
you say that?
don't think it's enough spot market stuff out there to really affect everyone else's operation. Spot market load pop up. Hey man, I got a load in the middle of nowhere going to the middle of nowhere. Stuff like that. Hey man, I'm right on top of it. I'll grab it. But like I said, I think for the most part, they may be talking about, the bigger contracts, your Walmarts and things of that nature. Just bigger, mega stores or mega carriers or whatever being dedicated to a cheaper route. That affects the market more so than that spot stuff. So
I got you. I got you. So, you saw the poll that I put up on YouTube, which basically, it's a couple of factors that, I was thinking could affect freight rates. But again, I don't understand this stuff. As a matter of fact, man, just to, go off topic, just for 5 seconds, I'm thinking about using a segment like this, like we doing right now, for a new segment on my channel that I want to call Teach Me Trucking.
Right.
So I can basically dig into the subjects in trucking that I don't know nothing about. You know what I mean? The people that's kind of behind me listening to this stuff, they like, all right, well, I want to learn about that too. And people that's ahead of me, like yourself, and like y'all can chime in the comments and stuff and kind of, like, because I'm interested in this stuff, even though it doesn't really, I don't feel like it directly applies to me. But anyway, so I was thinking there were several factors that affect freight rates, and the choices that I gave people in the poll, as you saw, was shippers, carriers, supply and demand, fuel prices, and brokers. Those are the choices that I gave people, and most of the people chose supply and demand. So are they basically talking about when there's less freight in an area and more, or when there's less freight and more trucks, freight prices would be down? And when there's more freight and less trucks, freight prices would be up. That's generally what they're speaking about with supply and demand. So there is no such thing as a lot of freight. And
when the economy is good and these big companies are producing, there's a lot of freight,
Okay, well, so my question is there no such thing as a lot of freight and or I should say a little bit of freight and a lot of trucks?
It's pretty much always a lot of trucks. So you might have a certain area where there are not many trucks, but I ain't gonna say that's rare, but there's gonna be trucks everywhere.
Yeah.
So
is there ever a scenario? What I'm asking, is there ever a scenario where there's not a lot of trucks, but a lot of freight, and freight rates are still not good? Is that not a thing?
You say if it's a lot of trucks, not
a lot of trucks, but a lot of freight available in an area or whatever, and the freight rates are still not good. Is that not a thing?
I wouldn't think that it would work like that, because if you got a product that you need to move, and you're gonna have to up them rates until you get guys that's willing to come and get your product. If it's a lot of freight, if it's a lot of freight, why would I go here to get a $2 a mile load when I can go right here and get a $3 a mile load? So they had a $2 a mile load, they're gonna have to up the rates on that, $3-4 a mile, in order for you to, then it's, competition, you got to up their rate. So
I'm thinking and again, this is just me just thinking,
Mhm.
if the economy, overall, if the economy is not good, then
Right.
I would think that that's the main influencer of rates. And if the economy is good, then, you know what I mean, both of those things would be the main thing that would influence rates. That's what I would think. So here's kind of what I'm thinking. I'm wondering, like in the scenario I asked a minute ago, is there ever a time where there's a lot of freight and a little bit of trucks and rates are still down? So right now, so tell me, how does this fit into the picture? Because I'm hearing right now that there are a lot of stores and like distribution centers and warehouses that are stocked up on freight right now.
Right.
And I'm hearing that. I think what people are attributing that to is consumer spending is slowing down. So you may have heard this before. You know what I mean? Like after the pandemic, stores started ramping up production.
Right.
But as people's spending has slowed down, that's caused inventory to just be sitting out there, not sitting out there, but essentially warehouses are more full, distribution centers are more full, retailers are cutting, you know what I mean? They slashing prices right now to get stuff moving because the consumer is not necessarily spending. And I would think that that would be a scenario right there where you got the freight is out there, you know what I mean? And you may not have a lot of trucks to move it, but because overall the economy ain't healthy, because consumer spending is not where it needs to be, it seemed like that would be a main influencer of the rate as well. Am I off track with all of that? Is it influenced by that many factors?
Well, it could be now. And one thing you got to remember is this pandemic thing is a kind of a new situation that had happened with over the last couple of years. So yeah, now that may be a factor over the last couple of years, but before that, it was more supply and demand. So now, like I say, with with this pandemic thing, makes it being, just recent over the past 3 years, now your scenario kind of comes into play, where it is a lot of freight, but there's no reason to ship it out to the stores because the consumer not buying. So that may be.
Go ahead. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
That probably is a possibility now. So.
Yeah. And so if that's the case, if there is a scenario where that could happen, which it is, then that would have to mean, again, if I'm off on this, feel free to let me know, that consumer spending influences freight rates as well.
Absolutely. But like I said, that's a new thing. Consumers, I can say it's a new thing, but just
it hasn't affected it like that in the past, but it hasn't been that much of an influence
right up until the pandemic. Then the pandemic caused that to be one of the more major influence over the rates or whatever. But like I said, that's a new situation right there. New meaning over the past 2 or 3 years or whatever since the pandemic started. So
I find it interesting that, again, this is one of those things, I haven't mentioned this yet, but I did put this in the poll as one of the options of people that determine freight rates. And I did that because I'm sure you've heard this before. I see a lot of people complaining about brokers. Like, the brokers is getting people on the freight and all of that good stuff. And brokers is messing up the market and all of that. But I ain't heard you mention in this conversation, I ain't heard you mention nothing about brokers having that much influence over rates.
I mean, they gonna have some influence, but they gonna take their percentage of the rates, which means if the rates is up, they gonna take a certain percentage of those rates being up. If the rates are low, they gonna take a certain percentage of those rates being low. So they're not necessarily affecting the rates. They gonna get a certain percentage, but the rates gonna be up, they're gonna get a percentage, or the rates gonna be down and they're gonna get a percentage. So
yeah. So it sounded like it was a little bit painful for you to say that, but it sounded like you saying, the brokers ain't what's doing it.
I mean, they gonna, they're not painful. They gonna get their cut. I mean,
I don't heard all truckers say, man, these brokers, man, they doing this, they doing that, but
no, I've heard stories about brokers. When the driver actually found out what the load was actually paying, the broker was getting a lot more than what they thought they were getting. I mean, over half. I've heard about $3,000 loads and the broker getting, say, 2,000 and paying the driver 1,000 and things that nature. I've heard stories like that. So, but like I said, I don't think they can be that greedy to where they, affect the rates that much, So,
and it seems that whatever they take, they're working within the shipping costs, which is something that's about it. Like the shipper got a certain amount of window that they can afford to spend on shipping this this product, and whatever that is, the broker got to work within that. Correct?
Right.
So so regardless of what the brokers are doing, even above the broker, the shipper, I would say, would have to have more influence over the freight rate than the broker, regardless of what the broker is doing, because it's being set from the top as the shipper, right?
Exactly.
Yeah. But then also going back to what we was talking about a minute ago, I'm thinking even above the shipper is the consumer or the economy and the consumer. It seemed like especially, and again, maybe this is a new situation. It's all new to me because I ain't been driving that long. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
But it seemed like the consumer spending is the main driver of it all, because if they ain't spending, then it clogs up everything.
Right.
So, I mean, I don't know.
Definitely.
Like I said, the main thing that made me think about that was the way people blame freight rates not being what they should be on drivers hauling cheap freight. And I just, every time I see that, man, I'm like, man, if you feel like as a driver, I'm not, for whatever reason, I'm not getting the rate that I should or could because of another driver. Like, if that's what you up against, you can't win that battle. Because of what you just now said, all the stuff that you just now said, like you never know what this driver might have going on, why this load, why it might be worth it for them to take it, and you not worth it to take it. I'm just curious how many of those people that's saying that are saying that because they got a high cost of operation, because they got a high truck payment, because they got a whole bunch of stuff going on, and it's like, yo, I can't afford to run for as cheap as those other guys. So you know what I mean? It's like, and again, it's like if you feel like that's what you up against, you might as well go ahead and sell your truck, bro, because ain't nobody gonna pass up no loads so you can stay in business. You know, you might as well go ahead and sell that joint.
Yep.
I got you. So that's a worthless conversation then, man. Drivers taking cheap freight is messing stuff up. That's a worthless conversation. Even though
not necessarily. I mean, you do need pressure. You do need that voice out there to say, hey, don't take cheap freight. And maybe certain people will listen. Maybe it'll affect the bottom line in certain areas on some loads or some freight or, however it may work. So you do need that pressure to keep the bottom line of a freight rate, keep it from going too low, because you might get that driver that might say, yeah, I saw that sign said don't take no cheap freight. That's cheap freight right there. You know what? I ain't taking it. I'm going on back to the yard. So I have felt that, man, that load over there ain't paying what it should be. You know what? I ain't going to waste time going to get it. Now, would I feel that way had I not heard that don't take cheap freight statement? I may feel like, I'm going to get that load. Your load paying better than nothing. But like I say, sometimes I'm sitting somewhere, I'll be like, you know what? It ain't really worth my time. I'd rather just go and get back home this evening, man, and enjoy the day. I might make an extra however much over fuel, but it just ain't really worth the time. That's another thing I look at. If your profit ain't but say $200-300 on a cheap load, how much time you got in? Do you have to sit on it till the next day? All that good stuff. So, need everything you can to affect that bottom line on that rate. So